Today, I want to have a conversation with you about another element that's necessary for spiritual maturity. And I want to talk to you about giving and money. It's a difficult topic to talk about money. You start talking about money, see, some of you already like, oh. It's hard to talk about money for a lot of different reasons. It's hard to talk about money. Few things get folks riled up more than talking about their money and what they ought to do with it. I have my own reluctance in talking about money and finances in the church. Those of you who have been with us from the beginning, how often do I talk about money? I don't. I've preached one sermon in all the time we've been here about money. Part of that is because before I came here, I was in a prosperity church and I saw the abuses in preaching and teaching and manipulating people about money. And what I hope to be able to do in this discussion, and we are not going to get all of this in today. I'm already reconciled to that. What I hope to do is to help you to understand the necessity of having a heart that's bent towards giving, the necessity of having a perspective about finances that are necessary for you and I to be able to achieve spiritual maturity. How many of us want to be mature, full grown in Christ? Here's our base text, Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. This is a common text that we've all heard. No one can serve two masters, for he will either hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. And then he defines for us the two masters. You cannot serve God as a master and mammon as a master. You cannot serve God and money. We are either going to love one and despise the other. We're going to hate one, love one. It's a contrast. My heart can't be in pursuit of money above my pursuit of God. Now, here's some statistics I drew from Barna. If anybody know Barna Group, bunches or more statistics than what you would ever really want to know or understand. But here's what I want you to see in this chart. They did a research looking at all Christians and non-practicing Christians, which I find that funny, right? Yeah, I'm a Christian, but I ain't practicing. All right. But notice this, what's really key here. This is in terms of their annual giving. So only let's just focus on practicing Christians, right? We gonna mess with the carnal folk. We gonna focus on the spiritual folk. 21% of Christians, 21% of Christians actually tithe. 21%. 9%. They give, but it's less than 10%. 8% say, yeah, I give, but it's not a set portion or amount each year. I kind of, I just kind of go with the flow as I give, right? And 37% say, I give, but the amount varies. And then the last percentage, 25%, don't give anything financially. It's Christians. Staggering, right? The New Testament emphasizes money and finance over 2,000 times. Talks about faith 215 times. Talks about salvation 218 times. In 16 of Jesus's 38 parables, he talks about finances, money. Why do you think that is? Is Jesus hooked up caught up in money? Why is he focusing on money so much? I think the reason Jesus spoke so much about money wasn't because he was so obsessed with money. I think he spoke so much about money because he knows we are obsessed with money. And he's after our hearts. And he knows that for many of us, our hearts have our money before God. Let's read the full text of our base sermon. Let's read the full text. So Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 and 20. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 and 20. It says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy. In other words, they're temporary. They only have temporary value. And where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures where? In heaven. Why? Because the treasures in heaven, the things that are of value in heaven, can't be corrupted. Where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal, and the fluctuations of the stock market can't affect. Watch this. 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart is also. The lamp of the body is the eye. Watch this. He's talking about finances. He's talking about money. He's talking about treasure. And he says your heart is connected to where your treasure is. Now watch. The lamp of the body is the eye. If your eye is sound, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is evil, your whole body will be full of darkness. If all the light you have is darkness, it is indeed darkness. Here's what he's saying. When I have the wrong perspective about money, my eye's dark. And if my eye is dark because the wrong perspective about money, everything about me is dark. In other words, I can't walk and live in the fullness of the light of the kingdom. Verse 24, this is where he leads into this. This is why he runs into this. And this is why he says, you got to make a decision. You can't serve both. We must make a decision. Because if we try to serve mammon and God, it's going to result in our light being dark. We'll talk to you about this thing, the treasure principle, because the catalyst that Jesus talks to us about is he says this: where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. I call that the treasure principle. The treasure principle is my heart is connected to my money. That's why when you start talking about money and folk money, you talking about their heart. You stepping on their heart. A man's heart is reflected in how he deals with money. I ain't say it. Our heart follows our treasure. Can y'all just allow me to kind of go with the flow here? Devil's a liar. Mark, give me some batteries. This died. Give me some thin ones. Yeah, so. So listen. We think that our treasure follows our heart. But God says, no. Whatever you sow and invest in, that's where your heart will follow, because your treasure represents your substance and your value. You remember you got that new car? And you signed off on that joker? And you looked at those payments? And you said, I can work that. Because you had treasure invested in it, right? Don't be leaning on my car. Don't be eating in my car. The car you had before you got the new one, you be riding, eating Mickey D's, fries all dropping down in between the seats. But when you got that new ride, don't be eating in my car. Don't be smoking in my car. Don't be leaning on my car. You went to the car wash every week. Your last car, you ain't been in a car wash in months. Why? Because where your treasure is, that's where your heart will always follow our treasure. Hit me up, Marv. You're going to have to run with me. So, I want to talk to you about mammon. What is mammon? Because he said we can't serve God and mammon. And it's important because if we're going to be spiritually mature, we have to understand what this contrasting, what this competing imagery, this competing values are. What is mammon? Mammon is mentioned 4 times in the Bible. In the Old Testament, mammon was a demonic spirit that was worshipped and by the Chaldeans. It was personified. It was the personification of wealth and riches. Mammon is a spirit that influences money. Mammon desires to be worshiped. Mammon, this demonic spirit, has influence and control of people's lives. And what it seeks to do is to cause us to love money more than we love God. Remember what Timothy said? Remember what Paul told Timothy? Paul said, Timothy, in the last days, know ye this, that men will be lovers of what? Pleasure more than lovers of God. Paul didn't say men won't love God. He said they'll love pleasure more than lovers of God. Mammon doesn't cause us to not have a value for God. What mammon does is to cause us to have our value for money to be greater than our value for God. It's a demonic spirit. It rests on money and finances. All finances that come out of this world system, have the spirit of mammon resting on it. Our money is either going to have 2 spirits on it. Spirit of mammon, which is the spirit of the world, or the spirit of God. When God put Adam and Eve in the garden, how did he provide for them? He said, I've given you every fruit-bearing tree for food. So all Adam and Eve had to do for provision was to reach up. Oh, can you see the picture? To just reach up. When Adam and Eve fell, what was the consequence in terms of provision? Yeah, God said, by the sweat of your brow shalt thou toil in the earth. So as a result of the fall, as a result of being out of relationship with God, as a result of moving out of the position that God originally intended for man, instead of him reaching up for provision, man now was forced. And in being forced to toil and being forced to labor, to reap from the ground that was cursed. Mammon is the spirit that rests on money. I got so much to say and I don't have, listen. That's why you got to redeem your finances. Giving is a way that you can redeem your finances. Giving is a way that you can get the curse of mammon off your finances. But I'm way ahead of myself. Mammon is the spirit that manifests itself in greed. Look, I've always said this, the biggest problem in our country It ain't LGBTQ people. It ain't reproductive rights. It's greed. You can trace the root of all of our issues and all of our challenges. It's greed. Mammon is the spirit of lust. Mammon is the spirit of poverty. You say, wait a minute, I thought mammon was about money. No, man. It's also about a poverty mindset. The fear, the lack of resources, a scarcity spirit, ain't got enough. That's why some people don't give, because they think if I give, I won't have enough. Lack and debt. See, that's why 1 Timothy said this: the love of money is the root of all evil. The love of money. He didn't say money is the problem. The love of money. And the love of money is the manifestation of the spirit of mammon, placing a value for money above God. That's the root of all evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness, wanting more, wanting more, wanting more. Look at mammon in the earth today. You say, oh, Dave, you just making this stuff up, man. This stuff, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, Dave. I don't know what you're talking about. The whole world is in debt. Why? Because we believe that money is the answer. We spend more money on our educational system than any country in the world and get worse results. And we think the answer is throw what? More money at it. We spend more money on health care in America than any other country. But we think the answer is throw more money at it. Look at the household debt. That's individuals. We complain about the national debt. Look at the household debt. Why? Because the spirit of mammon and the society and the culture that we live in has convinced us that the solution and the answer is money. Mammon says all you need is more me. That's all you need. Just get a little bit more of me and you'll be all right. Just get a little bit more of me and you'll be secure. Just get a little bit more of me and you'll be happy. Just get a little bit more of me and you'll be fulfilled. That's why we get so uptight when we talk about money, because the truth is it's that spirit of mammon trying to buck back. Because when we talk about money from a biblical perspective, we are entering into a spiritual realm. We are treading on the territory of one of the most pronounced, powerful, influential spirits in the spirit realm. The spirit of mammon. See, that's why the scripture says, we've all heard this, just as the rich rule the poor, so the borrower is servant to the lender. I want to give you a different lens to examine this scripture from. He's not just talking about that when I got that car loan or my mortgage, because some of us are still in partnership with the bank. We're getting close to firing them, but we're still in partnership with the bank. He's not talking about, I'm serving to the bank. What this is really saying is, because when we borrow, can I pastor you? Because when we borrow, we are placing ourselves to be in debt, not to the institution we borrowed from. We are placing ourselves to be in debt to the spirit of mammon. Because now when we incur debt, we have to reorganize and reprioritize our lives to serve that debt. Is that real talk? That's real talk. It's clear that our culture and the world we live in is in bondage and enslaved to the spirit of mammon. There's a rival God that we are in a constant battle with in our hearts before the Lord. So I take you back to this one statement about worship. If our worship to God isn't changing us, our worship to something else is. If God isn't first, and we're serving mammon more than we're serving God, we love money more than we love God, we have a greater value for money more than we have for God, money and the pursuit of it gets the first priorities in my scheduling and my time, and God doesn't. My debts get the first priority in my budgeting, but not my giving. What spirit are we serving? What's changing us? Before we can begin to be generous givers, we have to overcome the spirit of mammon. In order to overcome the spirit of mammon and to be spiritually mature Christians as it relates to giving, I have to have a biblical perspective about money. I have to have a biblical perspective about money. One of the foundational perspectives that we need to have, and I'm going to give you 4 others, but one foundational principle, right? Let's all read this together. Can we read this? Let's read it. But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be content. But we don't live like that. We don't live like that. We don't live like that. I like nice cars. Hey, y'all on Zoom, I like nice cars. I've always driven Cadillacs. I like nice houses. I like nice clothes. I like nice things. I am not advocating for the virtues of poverty. Do not misunderstand me. But my car payment and my house note don't stop me from giving. See, this ideal of contentment is this. Yeah, I want something better. Yeah, I'd like to have a better house. Yeah, I'd like to make a little bit more money. Yeah, I'd like to drive a nicer whip. But if I never get any of those, I can have joy just with God. I'm satisfied, God, with you. Just like if nothing else ever comes, Lord, I am satisfied. I am content. I am fulfilled. I've got joy just with you. But Mammon says, no, sister, you can't really be happy unless you get some of this. No. You can't really be happy unless you get some more of that. God is not enough to satisfy. Biblical perspectives on money. We'll hit these real quick. First biblical perspective to understand about money, if we're going to overcome the spirit of mammon so that we can be spiritually mature as Christians because we are giving, money never satisfies. Ecclesiastes 5:10. He that loves silver won't be satisfied with silver, nor he that loves abundance with increase. It's all vanity. It ain't gonna never be enough. Remember Martha Stewart? No, she hang with Snoop Dogg now. But remember Martha? Y'all know Martha went to jail. Martha's a convicted felon. Do you know why Martha went to jail? Inside trading. Martha, before she went to jail, what do you think Martha was worth? Martha was about $1 billion. International brand, right? Do you know what the value of that inside trade that she did was? $50,000. She went to jail for $50,000. Why? Because silver shall never satisfy. Money will never satisfy. You can't get enough. You can't get enough. See, for Martha, you would think that somebody as rich as she was, that the poverty spirit and the spirit of lack wouldn't affect her. But that spirit of lack, man, said, ooh, you're going to lose 50. Don't worry about the 800-900 million you got. You're going to lose 50,000, girl. You better go get that money. Contentment. What is it? that you whisper in your heart, oh, if I only had this, I would be so much more happier. I would be so much more fulfilled. I would be so much more satisfied. I'm here to tell you, if God is not at the top and the front of that list, you are being influenced by the spirit of money. If it is money and material things that you are convincing yourself that is the key to your happiness, we are being influenced by the spirit of mammon. The other perspective on money is riches are uncertain. Riches are uncertain. Look at the instruction that Paul gives to Timothy concerning folks that got money in the church. Watch this. Let's read this very carefully. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth. Watch the commandment. The commandment has nothing to do with a prohibition or restriction on having wealth. He didn't say command people not to have wealth, command people not to be rich. No. God is not concerned with you having wealth. He's concerned with wealth having you. He says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope or trust or confidence in wealth. Oh man, if I can just bolster up this, I'm going to be good. If I can just bolster up that, I'm going to be good. If I could just get this, if I can just get this vehicle, if I could just get that, man, I'm going to be good. Don't put your hope in wealth. Why? He says it's uncertain. I could stop right here. He says it's uncertain. Now, because we've grown up in this capitalistic free market culture and society, if we are honest, the last thing we believe is that money is uncertain. Shoot, we go to the bank and we secure debt because we believe there's a certainty about money. You mean it's uncertain? You mean it's uncertain? Everything that I know about money is certain. You mean it's uncertain? The whole world trades and does commerce on this thing that God is saying is uncertain. What do you believe about money? God says it's uncertain. It's uncertain because it has no capacity to provide to us as spiritual beings and as Christians the things that we really need. You see it all the time. My wife and I, we like to watch, I forgot what the name of Unsung. Anybody ever watch Unsung? I love watching Unsung. And there's probably other shows like this, but you ever see people when they get famous? I always say that, I said, man, that fame ain't nobody's friend. That fame don't do folk no good. That fame be breaking folk down. Riches and wealth, it can't provide you happiness. It can't provide you stability. It can't keep cancer out of your body. It can't keep your marriage from falling apart. It can't keep your relationships with friends and family from deteriorating. That's the uncertainty about money. It's not the solution. It's not the panacea for all of our ills and problems. And you know what I think the problem is? I'm all off now. But you know what I think the problem is? Like, I think things got worse in our society. This is just me. I ain't got Bible for this. This is just my opinion. Look at somebody and say, this is just his opinion. He ain't got no Bible for this. Lifestyles of the rich and famous. Growing up, you compared yourself to the folks down the street that was just as broke as you. Right? All of a sudden, that cat with the British accent came on, the lifestyles of the rich and famous. And we started seeing bling and how people live, and covetousness sank into the heart of the American people. And if you look at the individual household debt from the time that started till now, money's uncertain. Don't put your hope in money. Watch this. But to put their hope in God. Look at that contrast. You can't serve God. You can't serve money. There's that theme again. Don't trust money. Trust God. Don't put your hope in money. Put your hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Third thing about money and a biblical perspective on money is this: our lives are more than what we have. Luke 12:15. Beware, guard against every kind of greed. That word guard, Jesus is saying, put your dukes up. Jesus, it's that word guard is a military. The Greek is a military phrase about setting a post in front against every kind of greed, every manifestation of the spirit of mammon. Guard yourself. Why? Because your life ain't about what you got. But we live in a society that tells us that our lives and the value of our lives and the success of our lives and the accomplishment of our lives is about what we got. That's why our identity is so steeped in what we got, where we live, what we drive, how we dress. See how much mammon influences us? See, when I first started, it seemed like a crazy spiritual, religious kind of thing. You start unpacking that bad, we go, oh, that stuff is true. What you have doesn't really add value to your true life. Your life, your value to God, your ability to pursue and achieve God's plan and purposes for your life isn't based on what you got. The church has gotten richer materially, but poorer spiritually. Fourth perspective on money. It ain't yours. It ain't yours. I had the wrong verse there. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and all they that dwell therein. The cattle on 1,000 hills belongs to God. Your life is not your own, for you've been bought with a price. Therefore, glorify the Lord with your body. If you belong to God, your money ain't yours. I know those are fighting words. I know. Them is fighting words. You're like, listen, I've been putting in 10, 12 hours. I've been getting up 3 o'clock in the morning driving bulk. What you talking about? It ain't mine. What you talking about? I tell you what though, preacher, it may not be mine, but it dang sure ain't yours. Keep your hand out my pocket. Oh man, I'm trying to teach y'all. Stop. Y'all stop. It's not ours. You hear some people say that, and there's validity to this. Lord help me. There's validity, I'm just trying to be a good steward of what God entrusted to me. And there's validity to that. We are to be good stewards, right? The whole parable of the talents is about being a good steward. Yes. But there's a difference. There's a difference between being a steward and stewardship. See, stewardship is about managing something that belongs to someone else. If you're just carefully, adding up your coins and ducats and keeping all your stuff in the row, and you have the mindset that it's yours and you're only accountable to what you do with it to you, that's not stewardship. Stewardship is managing something that belongs to somebody else. And are you doing with it, and are you treating it, and are you valuing it the way that the person who owns it says you should? I'm being a good steward of my money, but I don't give. I'm being a good steward of my money, but I don't tithe. I'm being a good steward of my money, but I don't give to the needs of others. No. So if we're going to overcome spirit of mammon, we need this attitude about, this perspective about money. Are we good? I want to hit you with this. Are you full? Back to this treasure principle. Back to this treasure. Your treasure is connected with your heart. If your heart is influenced by mammon, then you're going to treat your treasure one way. If your heart is influenced by God, you're going to treat your treasure another way. Listen, God doesn't need our money. What he wants is what our money is attached to, which is our hearts. God knows how much our hearts are attached to our money. Watch this. We cannot give beyond the capacity of our heart's commitment to and value for God. I cannot give beyond the capacity of my heart's commitment to and value for God. It amazes me, but it amazes me how so many of us as Christians will bend and twist ourselves in a knot to try to come up with all these different formulas and rationales around giving. The tithe debate. I think all that's foolishness. Because it's like, well, what's my max? You have a max for how you love your wife? You have a max for how you love your children? That's kind of irrelevant. What's my max? Well, if I give over here and I give over here and I give over here, does that all count toward? It's like you're trying to find a way to justify the minimum amount that you can give and get away with it. I've always believed this. If God doesn't have our heart, he'll never have our money. You can't give beyond the capacity of your heart's commitment to God. We see this with the Macedonian church in Corinthians when they were sowing to the needs for the saints in Jerusalem. And I'm going to hit you with this and then I'm out. 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 3. So there was needs for Christians in Jerusalem. And Paul and they were going through the churches and they're collecting. And the Macedonian church, they were poor. They didn't have any money. But watch this. Paul says, for I can testify that they gave not only what they could afford, but far more. And they did it of their own free will. They were broke. And even though they were broke, they wanted to give more than what they had. They didn't say, what's my minimum? They did it of their own free will. Watch. He said they begged us again and again for the privilege. See, when you think about giving, do you see it as a privilege? Or is it a burden? You hear people say, I got to pay my tithes. Pay your tithes. I pay my mortgage. I pay my car note. I pay my electric bill. I pay my gas bill. I pay my tithe. Pay my tithe. Tithing ain't a bill. Tithing is an expression of a heart relationship. But watch this. Watch this. He says they begged us again and again for the privilege of sharing in the gift for the believers in Jerusalem. They were begging to give, even though they were broke. Some people are, when I get some more money, I'll be a giver. If you ain't giving when you're broke, you ain't giving when you got money. Listen, when I was broke, $5.25 an hour, wife, 4 kids, Tracy used to have to take the checkbook from me going to church. Because listen, I was like, we're going to sew our way out of this thing. Watch this, watch this. I'm trying to make a point here, and I'm run out of time, and I think I've exhausted your capacity. He says, they even did more than we had hoped. Watch this. So how is it that these folks that ain't have no money, they needed an offering themselves, but yet they were willing to give out of their lack and willing to give more than what they actually had? They begged for the opportunity to do it. They wanted to do it. They wanted to give. They wanted to be generous. What could provoke a people to be generous with very little of their own? For their first action was to give themselves to the Lord. Their first action. So you can't serve God and mammon. The first thing they did was align their heart with God. They made God first. And then that spirit of mammon, which is lack and poverty. Oh, don't get that away. What you gonna do? You give that away. Oh, you might not make it. They were able to overcome that because they first gave themselves to the Lord. See, you can't give. See, I'm not trying to manipulate you into giving. This is my second, and all the time that we've been ministering, my second time talking about finances. It's important to understand spiritual maturity. Because either the Spirit of God is going to speak to your heart and you're going to lay some things down, or you're going to bolster up your defenses and rationalizations. And that's a battle that ain't mine to fight. They gave themselves first to the Lord. Here's a Nigerian proverb. When I saw this, I thought, ooh. It is the heart that does the giving. The hands only let go. It is the heart that does the giving. The hands only let go. You see, when we give our money to God, we're giving a very important part of our life. We are actually giving him our time, what represents our time, our strengths, our talents, our passions, our pursuits. We put the major effort of our life, most of us, into the work that brings in our money, our income, our wealth. I'm out there in the world just like y'all. This ain't full time for me. I got the same pressures. I sweat, toil, just like y'all. I got to jump on a plane to Puerto Rico on Saturday. I got to labor for mine. I know that might not sound. I just caught myself on that. Scratch. Listen. When we offer to God a portion of our income, we are offering ourselves to God. It is an act of worship. You see, the tithe was never about the 10%, because actually there were 3 tithes that they were required to bring 3 times a year. And they were required to bring offerings. And they were required to give alms. And if you owned land, you had to leave the corners of your field for the poor. So it was way beyond 10%. So save me that whole discussion. But it was never about 10%, 50%, 30%. It was about the heart. It's about the heart. In Malachi chapter 3, the verse that we always think of, bring unto me your tithes and offerings in the storehouse. Well, before that says, would a man rob God? Well, how have we robbed God? In tithes and offerings have you robbed me. Read before there. Before there, there's a discussion. The whole book of Malachi is about Israel's heart turning away from God. Their heart had turned away from God so much. Their heart had turned away from God so much that they were bringing offerings, right? But it wasn't lambs without blemish. They were bringing in the three-legged lamb that had one eye, lamb that had one ear bitten off, right? All deformed. Oh, they gave. Watch this. It just wasn't their best. Just wasn't their best. And what they gave and the quality of what they gave was reflective of their heart. And so the prophet was saying, you've turned from God. And they said, well, how shall we turn back to God? How do we turn back from God? How do we turn back towards God? He says, return unto the Lord. They says, how do we return unto the Lord? And they said, well, will man rob God? And of course, like, who gonna rob God? He said, but you have, in tithes and offerings. So the whole discussion about tithes and offerings, bringing them into the storehouse, right? He'll rebuke the devourer, right? All that stuff. All that was really about returning to God. It was really about reuniting your heart with God. And the evidence of you reuniting your heart to God was that you was going to give. Let's put aside whether it's 10%, 15%, put that aside and focus on the fact it's about whether or not you're going to give and the quality of your giving. See, God wants us to see our money as something holy. He wants us to see our money as something that we need to offer in worship to God. That's why you don't pay your tithe. Okay? You're not a tither. You don't believe in tithing. Whatever you give, God looks at it and he sees it as an act of worship. And he's assessing the quality of what you give. That's what Jesus... Can I preach to you? Can I... Here's Jesus in the temple, and they're taking offerings. And here's Jesus standing by the offering plate. And here come folk putting in, right? And he's like, no. And then here comes this little old lady. And she got something that ain't even worth 2 pennies. And she throws it in. Jesus stops everything. Hold up, stop, wait a minute, hold on, stop everything. Come to a halt. Let me teach y'all something. All of y'all gave out of your abundance. She gave out of her poverty. She gave all she had. The quality of her giving was significantly less than what everybody else gave. It was the so again, save me with the 10%. You know the quality of your giving. You know. Watch this. Ah, Lord, Oh. Yeah, I'm going to end here. We can't be spiritually mature if we're not givers. We're never going to be givers if we try to serve God and mammon. One of them has to be first. We live in a society, we live in a culture that is influenced by the spirit of mammon. We're wrestling, even as we're hearing this, we're wrestling in our mind because money is so important. Money is so valuable, right? I always say this, money can't buy you happiness, right? But it can rent you some. Money has a place. It just shouldn't have the first place in our heart. God desires your heart. When we give, when we sow, we are giving God our heart and what it treasures in worship.